All right, welcome into Ethan Skolnick starting nine here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Let me shift my hat. There we go. You can get one of these on our website, by the way, if you're looking for any kind of merchandise. FiveReasonsports.com, all our hats, shirts, and everything else along those lines. Manny Chang is the producer today. We're going to talk Miami Dolphins today. We'll talk Miami Heat tomorrow. Of course, the Heat play against the Knicks tomorrow at home. And we're going to tell you about a sponsor here right at the start because we're having our first ever happy hour. This is a Heat happy hour. We're going to be doing it at City Cigar Lounge. Down the street from FTX Arena. We're going to start at 4 o'clock because we know some of you don't really work. And also, you need to get out there early before all the traffic gets really bad. So come out if you can. Again, if you're working from home, just say, I got to go get a cigar. I'm going to go work from there. We're going to be over there at 4 o'clock, 4 to roughly 7. And then you're welcome to stay. I'm going to have to go down the street to the arena after that because, again, the Heat play the Knicks at 7:30. This is a great spot. They got more than 50 different types of cigars, and they got more than 350 different types of liquor. So get yourself a little bit liquored up before you go yell at Julius Randle. So check it out. Again, it's at City Cigar Lounge. It's this Wednesday, starting at 4 p.m. We're going to have a few of us from the Five Reasons Sports Network who come out there because I know, only about half the people in our network actually work. All right, let's get to it today. The Miami Dolphins, I feel like we've kind of just put them out of our mind, right? Like I was thinking of doing an episode today on the Dolphins, and it was like, okay, is anybody still paying attention to this? You had the NFL games over the weekend. It was a great NFL weekend. I wish I'd actually gotten a chance to watch the last game, the game between the Bills and the Chiefs. But I was sitting in an interview room at the arena waiting on LeBron James, who was waiting on the game to end. So, and he didn't actually make it all the way till the game ended, but then he tried to get out of his press conference because he wanted to find out exactly what happened. So it was a great weekend in terms of football. And I did watch basically 2.5 of the 4 games. And the consensus that I can tell from Dolphins Twitter is we're never going to be that. Right? Like there's a feeling at the end of the season, like whether you're close or you're not close. And typically after a 9-8 year, there would be a lot of Dolphin fans saying we're close, right? We're close. We won 10 games the year before. I mean, we've got a winning record over the past 2 seasons. Yes, the coach has been fired. But we've won 19 games over 2 years. It's a significant enough achievement. I mean, the Lions might take it. And, there would be some feeling of, okay, if we can do this or we can do this or we can do this, not that many things we can get to that level, right? I'm not sensing that from Dolphins Twitter. I am sensing dread that this team is further away than they've ever been because people watch the Chiefs-Bills game and they're like, we don't have one of those, right? I mean, I feel like we've been saying that pretty much since Danny started to decline, in the mid-90s. We don't have one of those. Going back to Peyton Manning, we don't have one of those, right? Even an Eli Manning, even a Phillip Rivers, even any of the quarterbacks, a Drew Brees, any of these quarterbacks, and then going into Rodgers and Brady and the rest, this has been the lament of Dolphin fans. We don't have one of those. And so, obviously a couple of years ago, they drafted somebody that they thought might be one of those, right? 5th overall. We thought he might be one of those. We sold a lot of T-shirts. Not because we were trying to trick you. We legitimately thought he might be one of those. Now, he's not bad, okay? I mean, this is why the whole Tua debate and why I sort of agree with Dono, which I'm not going to admit readily usually, but the whole Tua debate is sort of silly because he's kind of somewhere in between. This is a more nuanced conversation than anybody on Twitter wants to have. He's not awful. He's not, okay? You cannot convince me he's awful. Nobody completes 85% of their passes over a 3-game period in the NFL if they're awful. I have seen awful. John Beck was awful. Ray Lucas, I'm sorry, really nice guy, was, at least here, was awful, okay? There are plenty of quarterbacks the Dolphins have put out there who are awful. This guy is not awful. But Jay Fiedler wasn't awful either, which was a case I used to make to people all the time. Jay's fine. Jay's fine. That's what I would say. Jay's fine. Now, ultimately, to get to where you wanted to go, he wasn't quite fine, right? Because the defense had to be so elite. It had to be so elite. It had to essentially, the guys like Jason and Zach and Timbo and Sam and Pat, they couldn't give up much of anything because you had to allow the offense some time to get going. Not all of that was Jay's fault. Some of it was the way that the offense was coached. It's okay to punt, Dave wants that, whatever. But the reality is that defense, as good as it was, and it should have 2 Hall of Famers, not 1, as good as it was not good enough to be able to sustain it for 4 quarters all of the time when the offense was putting up 17-20. So Jay was fine. He was fine. He was better than a lot of what's come after him. Okay, there are a lot of people who I think looking back will be like, well, maybe we're not nice to Jay Fiedler. I mean, really, Chad Pennington's 1 season, right? Then it fell apart. Henny had a couple of moments. Tannehill has probably his best year was probably his last year before he got hurt. We see again, Tannehill is fine. He's not the guy. I mean, the easiest bet in the world was betting against Tennessee during the playoffs. Just the easiest. Number 1 seed, favored. Tannehill, no. Okay? And the question again becomes, can you get to where you want to go with fine? Because I think Tua is fine. Is Tua going to be more than that? Here's my thing on it. I spent the entire last offseason, making the case that people were downgrading him too much because they weren't acknowledging, A, that he had an awful offensive line with a bunch of rookies on it, but also he was coming back from a major hip injury. He had to get back into shape from that first before he could do any of the real strength training that he needed to do to play the quarterback at this level. And so I made the case that people weren't being fair to Tua and that he would be much better this year than people gave him credit for. And to be honest, he was. He was. Until kind of the last 3 or 4 games. Now, how much does the dysfunction have to do with that behind the scenes? The fact that his coach didn't support him, which we kind of knew, but has become clearer over time now as more and more leaks out. Okay, that certainly didn't help. But on the field, I mean, we have to acknowledge it. And this is why I'm going to go to the other point of this. And this is kind of the people that Dono's speaking to. Like, he's fine, but he's not great. Like, the 2 folks who say he's great, he's not. Now, can he be? Maybe. Okay? Again, he still needs to get stronger. I do think his anticipation, his awareness in the pocket is pretty damn good. Okay? His ability to get rid of the ball quickly, work around a bad offensive line is really good. Some of the decision-making, and again, maybe this is forced by the fact he's got a bad offensive line, so he was always afraid of getting hammered in any second, was not good a couple times a game. Not good enough. Here's the thing about it. When you don't have, I'm not a big, I don't harp on the arm strength that much. Okay, plenty of guys with strong arms were shitty quarterbacks. Okay, I'm not going to harp on it that much. Jamarcus Russell had a strong arm. David Klingler had a strong arm. I mean, let's go through the list. Okay, lots of guys with strong arms are no longer playing in the NFL. Couldn't play very long. So I don't think it's the only thing. But I will say this: if you don't have a particularly strong arm, your decision making has to be impeccable. Okay, it has to be impeccable because the problem is that if you don't have a strong arm, but you make a decision to throw it into a certain spot at a certain time, and your arm can't make up for the mistake that your mind made, right? That's the problem. And I think that happened to him pretty much like twice a game. Now, sometimes he got away with it, and sometimes he didn't. But that's where he needs to get to, is where his decision-making is so impeccable that the arm strength really doesn't matter that much. The fact that he's an average NFL arm. He's not a noodle arm. Chad Pennington had a noodle arm by the time he came here, but Chad Pennington's decision-making was impeccable. Impeccable. As good as you'll ever see. As good as anybody's ever played, to be honest, because Chad never had a strong arm. He just always made the right decision. So the reason I'm starting with Tua is because everybody starts with Tua, because the Tua thing is, I think, what's got people freaked out, because they're watching not just the guys who lost, Rodgers and Brady, but obviously the guys, and Allen, but the guys who won, like Mahomes, like Matthew Stafford, who has a rifle, and all the rest of it. And everybody's like, okay, is this good enough to win now? Now, people are going to look past the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo has basically done nothing to get San Francisco where they're at. So it is possible to win with that kind of quarterback. It is possible. But then not only does his decision-making, and his is not great all the time, but the rest of the team needs to be really, really good. And San Francisco is. Which is something, obviously, that I'm going to try to read the comments now. I'm sorry. Which is something, obviously, that the Dolphins didn't account for when they decided to take their first-round pick. Manny, can you pull up a couple of comments again, since I'm blind without this, and then we're going to pivot? Ethan, did the Dolphins confirm that Tua will start, or what was it that Rappaport was reporting? I mean, confirming that he will start is something that I don't know that you can put any credence in at this point. Like, yes, my assumption is he's going to start. They don't have anybody else, right? But until a head coach comes in here, and I know the talk about the fact that the fact that that a coach is going to have to take him. I mean, let's see, and that's part of what I want to talk to Alfredo about. Okay, my latest column for Louis Sung: Miami needs not to make the same mistake and stop looking for a savior, build an army. Well, and Louis, so you can follow at Louis D. Sung. That is a perspective that some may have come out of the weekend with, because San Francisco has an army. They don't have a savior, right? Now, the Chiefs have a savior and enough of an army. The Bills have an army and a guy who, honestly, in the playoffs played like a savior. But, I mean, sometimes you just lose. Like, the Bills just lost. Like, there's nothing that Josh Allen could have done more, really, right? Okay? They just lost. They lost. Sometimes you just run into somebody who's like a hair better on a given day. I don't think the Bills have to blow it up. But I'm starting with Tua because we're going to pivot to the coaching search situation here. Because I feel like the debate about Tua is coloring the debate about the coach, okay? Where now, you have a quarterback who many think is quote-unquote mid, to use a young person's word, who, and Dolphin fans are frustrated that the coach may be determined by whether or not they can work with and elevate this quote-unquote mid quarterback. And all I got to say about this is a really fine line for the Dolphins to walk, and typically when they have to walk fine lines, they fall flat, okay? The fine line that they have to walk is, yes, you need a guy who at least can work with the quarterback you picked 5th overall 2 years ago. You need a guy who can work with him, who sees something in him that he can bring out, who doesn't use that quarterback as an excuse for failure if he fails a year from now. But I also don't think, and again, we're back to a nuanced conversation, I also don't think that you can pick the coach strictly because he likes the quarterback, right? Because if the quarterback fails, then you picked a coach who may not be able to do the other things that you need him to do. This is a balance. Look, as much as I bang on Steve Ross and the Dolphins, and I praise what the Heat do, it is easier in the NBA. It is, okay? I mean, if you have one player, maybe two, you're going to be pretty good, okay? If you have LeBron, you're not going to suck. Now, you may be mid, as the Lakers are, and then somebody else gets blamed for the team's struggles because the roster is horribly constructed, mostly by LeBron. But you're not going to suck. Like, you're not going to bottom out. You're not going to be awful. You're not going to embarrass yourself, okay? I mean, the Lakers are going to be a playoff team. And also, you're only dealing with so many assistants, right? Like, I think the Heat have 5 full-time assistants. I'm not including strength coaches and that kind of thing. It's a smaller staff. It's a smaller group. It's fewer players. You hit on a couple things right. You build a structure behind it, as the Heat have, and you can be good for a little while. Now, the NFL is different. There are dozens of assistants, okay? There are 53 players, and that's just counting the ones who are active, not the 80 or whatever that you bring into training camp. It's a lot of decisions that need to make. There's a lot of interchangeable personalities. It's challenging, okay? And so I understand that it's challenging for the Dolphins to get this right, to continue to kind of find that balance. Well, we need to take care of this guy, but then also we need to take care of this issue, right? We want a coach who can work with our quarterback, but we don't want a coach who's dependent on the quarterback's success. These are not easy trade-offs. So I get it, okay? But this is the business you're in. And the Dolphins are really bad at this business. Like, they're not just bad compared to the Heat. Again, the Heat have an easier road here. They're bad compared to their peers. I'm going to get to that, JP. It's a good point. They're bad compared to their peers. right? Like they don't. I mean, the Chiefs, they get Andy Reid, right? Okay. And Andy Reid has gotten the quarterback situation right? Okay, because that's what he does. He's always gotten it right. And Andy Reid, as a quarterback guru, specialist, etc., they have Alex Smith. He's perfectly serviceable. They draft Mahomes, but he's fine, as I said about Jay Fiedler. Alex, he was first overall, but he's fine. They get Mahomes. He's better than fine, right? But Andy Reid has also built the rest of that program. They had an issue on the offensive line. It was addressed. The defense is not great, but it was much better this year. He knows how to manage multiple situations at the same time. The Dolphins have to find a coach who can work with Tua, but can also manage these other situations. And they can't just hire a coach because they need to bring the building back. I saw Simon from 3 Yards Per Carry retweeted that because he found it somewhere that was maybe it was a Rappaport story. That this was that Ross wants to bring the building back. To what? To what? What was the building before? I'd burn the building. Anyway, we're going to bring on Alfredo here in a second. Before we do, I want to tell you about another sponsor, the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I got this stuff right here, okay? It's called Salis, S-A-L-I-S. Get Salis is the website, GETSALIS.com. This is for endurance athletes, right? So, okay, you go or you have a run or whatever. Maybe you're in a 5K, a 10K. That gets me tired just thinking about it. But like, let's say you do that kind of stuff. Or let's say you just play basketball for a long time on the weekends, right? Okay, well, you're drinking Gatorade. That's not good enough. All right, you need to replace your electrolytes in a natural way, in a targeted way, okay? And that's what gets Salis. That's where you go to getsalis.com. That's why you get Salis, okay? And here's the thing about it. If you go to getsalis.com and use our product code, which you should know by now, is 5, that's the number 5, RSN, 5RSN, you'll get 10% off. So you get these little packets. They come 8 in this box. See the box? And you just use it, and you will be able to sort of do what you want to do for a longer period of time. So you can extrapolate that any way you want, all right? GetSalis.com. That's GetSalis.com. 5RSN is the code. Replace your electrolytes in a natural, healthy, no BS way. All right, let's get to No BS with Alfredo Arriaga. He's one of the hosts of 3 Yards Per Carry, along with the aforementioned Simon Clancy. We're both wearing the hat here, so you can get these hats at 5reasonsports.com. And also with Chris Kaufman, who I need to go consult because my Bitcoin is tanking. So maybe we'll have that discussion afterwards. Alfredo, the coach search. There is this overwhelming, it's funny because you participate in both. Heat Twitter is kind of so euphoric at this stage that they're bored. Like they're looking for shit to argue about. Like there's really nothing to argue about. So and
on the trade machine for Duncan
that's the thing. So last night, and you should check out the episode. It's actually over 4,000 views already because this is what I knew this would happen. We brought Adam Barai on last night, last minute, in his shadows in his basement, and we started and Greg, with like a minute left in the episode, throws out to me, would you right now trade Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, and I think it was a pick.
And PJ Tucker.
PJ Tucker, I'm sorry. That's right. For Bradley Beal. And I don't want to answer that. I don't want to answer the question, honestly, because Adam is there and he screenshots my stuff and he's going to play it back the whole time. So I literally ducked out of it. Greg said no. This is now hit Twitter, okay? And literally we do tend to shape all the Heat Twitter discussions, or a lot of them these days, okay? But this was not intentional. I mean, me doing a trade episode was, but this particular thing. And literally, Heat fans are arguing with each other about this because they're the number 1 seed in the East and they have nothing else to argue, even though nobody's been playing, and they have nothing to argue about. Dolphin fans have real things to argue about, okay? And there's just this overwhelming dread lately. There is this, they are going to fuck it up, aren't they? That is basically, that's where all Dolphin fans are. So, when people say I'm too negative about them and their last 25 years, it's not me, okay? It's them. So, let me ask you a question. What would be not effing it up this time? To you, what would be doing it right? Because the speed of a search to me Alfredo, is not indicative of the quality of the search or how it plays out. Plenty of searches have gone on for a long time, and you've ended up getting the right guy, and plenty of searches have been quick. I want that guy. I got to keep him away from somebody else, and the guy is gone in a year or two. The Dolphins have done that search too. So I don't care that it's taking a while. But ultimately, and JP asked, did Dayball going to the Giants? Is that reflective of Tua? It's something we should discuss too. But ultimately, like, what would be not effing it up for the Dolphins? Let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
I think not effing it up would be sticking true to character. And I understand. Okay, so you want to keep doing what you've been doing for 20 years and it hasn't worked. So that's not effing it up. Yeah, I would say so. If you're going to go completely off the board, that suggests you really don't have a clue what you're doing. Stephen Ross has said many a times when he's been interviewed and asked about a coach that he likes to take big swings. He wants young, hungry, and untouched by failure. That's the way he hires in the business world, right? Well, do it again and keep doing it until you get it right. And in my opinion, that would be Mike McDaniel. So yeah, that would be not effing it up, not getting completely out of character.
I love that from Kai because it's just I could look at that all day. It's just, you know why? Because it is so anti-type. I'm with you on this, and you can move him out of the way, Manny. I'm with you on this that you can go for the young, unproven guy if it's the right guy. I'm with that, okay? And I don't factor in the fact that San Francisco didn't score many points in a blizzard in Green Bay. Is working against McDaniel. Again, they won the game. I'm not crediting him for that either, but it is what it is. But I do think that I'm just having a hard time seeing Mike McDaniel work with Steve Ross, right? Am I missing something? I don't know. I don't know if that matters, okay? But it would be interesting. I would love to have the guy here because I've said repeatedly, like, at this point, I don't even care if the Dolphins are good because that's not going to happen. I just want them to be interesting. I just want them to be interesting, and he would make them interesting, right? Like,
he's an actual. This label gets thrown around all the time, but he is an actual genius. Like, this is actually a guy that has innovated in the NFL, and you know how they say nobody ever really innovates in the NFL. Well, he has. He simplified what was a very, very, very difficult system. They still run that system. Players love to run that system, and he's the only coach that I can see where star players actually actively talk about him during pressers and to media. So yeah, this is a guy that players like, coaches like, football nerds like, and he gets results, right?
Well, he seems to have
Jimmy Garoppolo.
He seems to have a certain self-deprecating quality, which I have always felt is critical to coaching. And I think it's critical to leading. Honestly, I think you have to be able to make fun of yourself. If you can't, people are uncomfortable around you because they feel like if they bring anything up with you, defensive. Like I don't deal very well with people who are immediately defensive. I when they're leading, and I feel like that self-deprecating quality, which by the way, Adam Gase did not have. Okay, I mean, like, he was the absolute opposite of that. It's apparent that Brian Flores really didn't have it either. And Eric's, I will say this to go back to Eric Spoelstra does. Okay, like, you can be extraordinarily confident in what you're doing and believe in what you're doing, and still be able to make fun of yourself. Okay. And be open to that conversation. And I think that is one of Eric's strengths, honestly, that he knows, like, I know what I'm doing. Like, you want to challenge Eric on something, he'll come back at you. He's done it to me on the side. But at the same point, he will also say, like, he'll say things like, about getting a triple-double, like, yeah, his coach really messed that up, okay, by not putting him back in or not running a play. Or I forgot Udonis was on the floor, when was on the bench when Dwayne came back to town. He will make fun of himself. And I feel like McDaniel, the clips I've seen, he has that.
Yeah, a certain authenticity is important. Nobody wants a coach that looks like he's putting on an act. And a lot of the New England guys, when they leave Belichick after a couple of years, they think they're going to have to do a Belichick cosplay to
Mm.
to see their tenure through, and it never works out. It's happened with every single guy, and it seems to have happened with Brian Flores.
Mm.
And look, some people say, oh, he holds on to the coach too long sometimes. Well, and this time they kind of nipped it in the bud like right away. Like they kind of saw the future and where it was going.
Mm.
And they said, you know what, maybe it's time to just let him go. And they were sure to make sure to tell everybody this was not football related because they won, they had back-to-back winning seasons. Although in my opinion, they underachieved this past year. So maybe that's how they're getting it right. But as far as is there a magic question you can ask to find out about these guys? I don't know how you can find out enough about somebody in 3 or 4 hours. If they have something really, really bad in their past, you think they're going to tell you in an interview?
Well, but see, okay, but that lends itself to, the Dayball Vance Joseph discussions, right? Mm-hmm. And so, let's get to it. I mean, with Dayball, is that official now? Did something happen this morning? Because JP, I know that there's been a lot of discussion about him to the Giants, but has that actually occurred?
No, that hasn't happened yet, but it's looking like it's likely. At least their beat is reporting that it's likely.
Okay, all right, and that's interesting too because I don't know if he thinks he can make something of that quarterback because I'm not sure he can. But let's pivot to Vance Joseph then because I feel like Vance Joseph is the guy that is going to get Dolphin fans pissed off, and I don't think it's because he did bad work here because I don't think he did. So I'll ask you about that. Did he do bad work here? Or did he do good work here? Like, how would you evaluate what he did in that capacity?
Well, his defense wasn't great, but they did turn the ball over. Like they did force turnovers. And Brian Flores has kind of proven the last 2 years. You get players that do that in college and do that in the pros. And guess what? It translates to the NFL because I don't think, it's everybody says, oh, turnovers are random. They're not random when Miami leads the league in turnover creation 2 years in a row.
Right. Right. No, there's something about your system that's doing. I mean, fumbles to a certain degree are I actually feel fumbles are more random than interceptions.
Yeah, that's completely random. Fumbles are completely random. But the way Miami plays, they play an aggressive style. Stands to reason. You play aggressively. Right. You're going to force the offense into mistakes, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. So, that's true. I think interceptions 80% of the time are it's maybe 70% of the time you're looking at probably defense. 20% is probably quarterback era, and 10% is probably just totally.
And let's face it, some guys are just there's nothing to explain it, right? They're just magic.
Xavier Howard, like X, yeah, right.
Xavier Howard is he's magic, okay? Right? Like he, if you look back on the season, the guy had 2 touchdowns that essentially became the difference in the 2 games that they won. So good players. If you have good players and they make plays for you, it works.
Right.
So, on Vance Joseph, I see everybody on Twitter like is ready to, jump off buildings over this. But does anybody really, really know if any of these guys are any good?
Well, they don't. I guess the thing is Vance Joseph, because I think that the thing is how you feel about Vance Joseph depends on how you feel to a certain degree about Chris Grier and how you feel about Tua, right? Like, because it feels like to a certain degree they're hiring a coach based on his ability to kind of go along with Chris Grier and his ability to accept Tua. And I think that is the part. So when you have a name that has been here before, who had, as you said, moderate success, went somewhere else as a head coach, did not have success, but not that anybody else has had success there lately either, just to be fair. I mean, Vic Fangio took over. He was a heralded defense coordinator, and their defense has been good, but they haven't won. He hasn't found a quarterback really, and they haven't won in Denver. And so I feel like, maybe some of that's being held against Vance. There are coaches who failed in one place. The Belichick example, obviously, is the one everybody cites. Pete Carroll, others who had success in the second stop. But I just think that's what's coloring this, Alfredo, is that it's like, okay, do you get along with Tua? Do you get along with Grier? And there are some people who are just honestly sick of both to varying degrees. And I guess I'll start here. If you were Ross, would you have brought in a different general manager and cleaned house completely and had that person hire the head coach? Because I not just to placate the fans, but I do feel like the fans would be more accepting of that than, again, these half measures that seem to be going on. Not just with the front office, but also now with the quarterback situation.
Yeah, I'm sure that the fans would have liked just a clean sweep if you really are gonna just kind of just sweep away whatever Chris Greer had done with Brian Flores. But I don't think you could have fired him this offseason, especially coming off of that draft.
Right.
But the main reason why you couldn't have fired him is because he actually performed what you asked him to do. You, meaning Stephen Ross, asked him to clean out the roster, fix their cap situation, and basically start over 3 years ago.
Right.
You look at the roster, and Stephen Ross kind of let the cat out of the bag. He likes the roster, so which means he likes what Chris Greer said. Obviously, what he's looking at is and I really do believe this, a very talented defense, and he's looking at a couple of players on offense because let's face it, the offense really needs offense is at square one, like that's.
That's why I don't understand how you can say you like this roster.
I think he likes half of the roster,
right,
and he likes and Waddle. He likes half the roster, Waddle and Gesicki. That's what he likes.
Well, we'll see how much he likes Gesicki, but he likes half the roster and Waddle, which I mean is fine. But but just to close the book on this, we appreciate Alfredo joining. Okay, so you're watching, and unfortunately I didn't get to because I was waiting on LeBron, as I do have done for half of my life. But if those who watch that Bills Kansas City game. You can't look at the Dolphins and say, I like that roster, right? I mean, you can't. I mean, literally, the Bills had a guy that half the country's never heard of who scored 4 touchdowns. I mean, it's hard to. who was going to do that? Mac Hollins on the Dolphins? No offense, because I like Mac, and I think he's one of the guys I'd keep around. But, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it seems like it's weird, Alfredo, in this sense, okay? And we'll close. It's weird. Because the Dolphins did not finish 4-13. They finished 9-8. And as you said, in your view, you think they underachieved. They were 10-6 the previous year. And yet the chasm between them and those two teams in particular, I don't know about Cincinnati. We'll see a little bit this weekend. But those two teams in particular, it seems enormous. It seems enormous.
It seems enormous because of those two aliens that are playing quarterback,
Right, yeah.
And imagine if you're looking up at the Cleveland Cavaliers in the mid 2000s and you're looking at LeBron James and you're like, wow, how are we going to compete with that? Well, you compete with it differently, right? On the aggregate, you have to get a good defense, you have to run the ball, you have to get play action, get weapons on offense to try to keep games close and then try to beat them with your defense.
Right.
You're gonna have to skin a cat a different way. And everybody says, you kind of need an elite quarterback to beat an elite quarterback. Last I checked, the MVP and the runner-up MVP just lost this past week.
They did.
And Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. And
there ain't nothing elite about Jimmy G. Ain't nothing elite,
And let's face it, Matt Stafford was our favorite loser until this season. He won his first playoff game this year, and he won his second.
But see, Alfredo, that speaks to both sides of this because, yes, the Rams upgraded at quarterback, which they needed to do because Jared Goff is a one-read guy. They upgraded at quarterback to a guy who was more improvisational. Okay, had the overall better skill set in Stafford, and that helped the Rams get over the top. But also, Stafford in Detroit, with garbage around him, couldn't win on a playoff game, could hardly win on Thanksgiving, okay? And he comes to the Rams, and you have you have a Cooper Kupp, you have obviously an Aaron Donald, you bring in guys, veteran guys like OBJ, okay, and Von Miller and others, and look where they are. That's why I'm glad we closed there. Because this is nuance. It's not just one. There's not, just as you said, one way to skin the cat. It's not, Tua isn't the greatest who's ever played, and he doesn't suck. There is a middle ground here. Dolphin fans are never going to find it, though.
The Rams are the perfect example of a fabulous roster, and then they just sprinkled in an above-average quarterback to bordering on very, very, very good, right? Because nobody's ever called Matt Stafford elite. He's never been an MVP candidate. So, that's the perfect example of, okay, that's a team that did it by just sheer overwhelming talent, right?
Right.
And then you look at San Francisco, and they're like the little engine that could, right? They're the ones that are doing with the formula. Defense, we run the ball, we don't turn it over.
But they know what they are.
At least we hope that Jimmy G doesn't turn it over.
But here's the thing. both teams know what they are.
Mhm.
They know what they are. The Rams know what they had, and they knew they needed an upgrade at the quarterback, but they had enough around them, and then they went out and got more pieces, veteran pieces, mortgaged some of the future to do it, right? San Francisco knows what they are. They knows what they are, okay? They drafted Trey Lance. Maybe they become more at some point if he develops. But they know what they are, okay? As you said, running game and defense. The Dolphins, over the past 25 years, have no idea what they are. They don't know what they are, okay? And they keep changing what they think they are. That is where I'd like to close here. I would like them this offseason to just figure out what they are. If you are a team that is going to be built on creating turnovers on defense, okay, that's fine. You have the talent to do that. Build an offense that's complementary to it. You cannot have a shitty run game, okay, and make that thing work. It's not, okay? So know what you are. Pick a guy who understands what you are. Hire Mike McDaniel. Alfredo.
And you can't find, and this is an imperative, you can't find your lead back in week 14.
Oh, God. It's just so bad. All right, Alfredo, we appreciate, is it down or no? I want to give them credit. Know what you are. Find what you are. Draft to what you are. Sign to what you are. I don't think that's happening, Manny. Anyway, we appreciate it. Manny Chang, getsalise.com, 5RSN. Who did I mention at the beginning of the show? Oh, City Cigar Lounge, our first happy hour before the Heat game. Go come get drunk, smoke some cigars, laugh at the Knicks, okay? And also prizepicks.com, use the code 5 when you sign up, and you will get a bonus. Have a good day, everybody.